Final showdown with elders of Xenon LOOMS. It's time to call a spade a spade. Most of the world's problem originate with a group known as Elders of Zion. This is an undeniable fact and has nothing to do with Jewish people. Rather, it's a group of inbred families who own most of the world's corporations and have been plotting to murder 9% of humanity and enslave the rest. That is why they have spent $6.4 trillion on war and mass murder since they orchestrated the 11 September terror attacks and fascist coup d'etat. This was enough money to end poverty, stop environmental destruction, and launch humanity into the universe. Instead, it was spent on a project to create a greater Israel, from which to rule the survivors of the planet artificial Armageddon. Let us be clear, the problem originates with the inbred group of families that control monotheism. As a reminder, we are ruled by a government that used religion to bottle us into a fallacy of fascism. Fascism is also known as rule by corporations. A Swiss study has shown that 737 people control 80% of the world's transnational corporations. These people are also known as the Elders of Zion. They control a system of Babylonian debt slavery through their ownership of most of the world's central banks. That is why their savings, the top 10% of the people, control 33.2% of the world's financial access, while the bottom 90% are burdened with 72.4% of the debt. This system is headed for collapse. Riots and civil unrest in Argentina, Bolivia, Britain, Chile, Denmark, Ecuador, Egypt, France, Guinea, Haiti, Honduras, Hong Kong, Iran, Iraq, Kazakhstan, Lebanon, Pakistan, and Spain share in common a deep distrust of the ruling elite. The peasants with the pickpocket are at all the gates. Also, as discussed last week, the entire corporate financial system has completely lost touch with reality and no longer functions. The chart below shows how the stock market and the real economy no longer correlate. We would like to add that the GDP numbers are widely exaggerated and do not reflect income disparity, which means the situation is even far worse than shown in the chart. Right now, indicators of real economic activity, especially in the United States, the epicenter of this crisis, show that a serious recession has already started, and yet the stock market is reaching record highs. The cable's Federal Reserve Board is pumping unprecedented sums of money into the system to try to prevent the meltdown. It now looks like something called collateralized loan obligations will be ground zero of the collapse. These are bundles of junk loans which work according to the same logic that caused the Lehman Brothers collapse. That is to say, the financial wizards somehow think that if you take a lot of small bits of garbage and put them into a big garbage bag, they stop being garbage. This chart below shows that the problem this time is at least twice as big as the Lehman crisis. This impending implosion and revelation is probably the reason the Black Sun worshippers at Peter Freemason Lodge contacted the White Dragon Society last week. The representative of the P2 said that Pope Francis, who's visiting Japan from November 23rd to 26th, will be contacted by them to try to work out a deal. The P2 are upset by Chinese plans to create the $10 trillion a year Earth-Moon space economic zone by 2050. They don't think space explorations will be dominated by a single race. The P2 were told it was time to remove Abe Shinzo, their puppet slave prime minister in Japan. Abe took his order from Michael Greenberg of the CSIS. The CSIS reports to Georgetown University, which reports to Jesus and the Pope and third to the P2. There are signs this process had already begun because the Japanese press has begun a campaign of Abe bashing. The Romans were also told to get on board with the British, Pentagon, and China's plan to set up meritocratic future planning agency. This would make sure space exploration would not be a Chinese monopoly. They will be further told that a jubilee is necessary. The Romans also need to come clean about the 11th September, Fukushima, and other crimes if they wish to be forgiven, and include in the creation of a new Star Trek world they claim to desire. In the meantime, to keep up the pressure, the colony of brainwashed Zionist slaves in Israel is under total siege. Pentagon sources say Israel is fenced in with a Russian submarine inside its territorial waters, they say. That means it can be obliterated by nuclear torpedoes that can go off any time, they explain. Furthermore, Hezbollah is armed to the teeth. Israeli drones are being downed, and its own missile defense has been reverse engineered by Russia, they say. This means the project for the Greater Israel is over. The crypto-centennial colony of Saudi Arabia is also in deep trouble, according to the Pentagon sources. After former Army General and CIA Director David Petraeus said the Saudis are running out of the money, the Aramco IPO is being boycotted by BRICS, hedge funds, foreign investors, pensions, sovereign wealth funds, insurers, state-owned enterprise, and virtually everyone. Because of not just geopolitical, military, and trust issue, but also environmental, social, and governance concerns, the sources explain. Meanwhile, back in the US, the Pentagon sources promise big things are about to drop after the conviction of U.S. President Donald Trump friend Roger Stone. We can only guess what the big things are, but the biggest thing we can think of taking down is the BIST, the private-owned central banks of privately owned central banks. As things stand now, inflation and deflation are caused by the BIST regime's outdated methods, according to European royal sources. The 18th-floor dinners at the BIST, where no minutes or records are taken, are where the world central bankers decide on the way things will be, he says. Replacing this with a quantum-based system will cut out this banker middleman, is what the governments of the West are doing everything they can to prevent from happening, he says. The problem is that the governments are too far down the food chain, too far down the pay grade, and to be very honest, probably too terrified of the mafia to take on the BIST. That is why this writer has recommended a military operation to take down the BIST and its sister institution, CERN. Even if the Pentagon fails to act, the agents are on the case, according to CIA sources in Asia. They tell us China has more than 20,000 metric tons of gold. They will use this to back a new cryptocurrency or use it as part of a new global currency, both of which Russia, Iran, India, and Indonesia also play a major role. Each of these countries also has at least 10 to 15 metric tons of gold that can be used as a backing for the new currency. Either scenario will bring down the petrodollar. This is the main reason the Khazarian cable agent impersonating MBS is pushing to get Aramco list ASAP. They know the game is already over. They are trying to extract as much cash as they can and divide it among themselves before it all collapses. The Pentagon can help make sure the collapse does not lead to chaos and bloodshed by shutting down the scribe inside the corporate propaganda machine. Meanwhile, it was full of a fake show featuring computer graphics of arrested politicians like Adam Schiff and Nancy Pelosi. A reporter with the Washington, D.C. press cards told us she was unable to get any response to requests to attend the so-called public hearings. Sending special forces to occupy Warner Media, Walt Disney, Viacom, Rupert Murdoch's News Corp, CBS Corporation, NBC Universal, Google, and Facebook is another recommendation. All of these corporations need to be forced to spin off the news operation and put them under the control of genuine fact-checking, truth-seeking journalists. To make this succeed, they also need to take down the CIA and Mozart Mockingbird media operations that are responsible for so many fake news reports and scripted news events like Sandy Hook and Boston Marathon bombing. Finally, they need to round up the members of the families that control the Fortune 500 companies through foundations and other fronts. Most of the 737 people who own the corporations are in Europe, So arrested will also need to be made there if this operation is to be succeed. So far, the only corporation the Pentagon sources has specifically told us they are targeting is Boeing. Here, they say Boeing will lose NASA and Department of Defense contract. First, refusal to provide workable oxygen system and lightning-proof 787s, as well as for other sloppy work putting profits above safety. Boeing is also facing boycotts by airlines, pilots, flight attendants, regulars, aircraft lessors, and flying public. They say, "Where attacking Boeing for incompetence is to be commended. Let's not forget that incompetence is not what caused the crashes that led to this company's crisis. The crashes were caused by the deliberate use of remote control hijacking equipment that has been installed in all Airbus and Boeing planes since the late 1990s. This is the sort of problem that can best be dealt with by means of Truth and Reconciliation Committee. In fact, while some crimes like the mass murders and cannibalism of children cannot be forgiven, much else can be. A truth and reconciliation process may be the best way to free the planet. As Jesus Christ once told the Jews, the truth shall set you free."